So, we've talked about the love triangle, but now we're going to talk about the other triangle. Today, we're going to delve into the relationships and characters of Cloud, Zack, and Aerith. This is going to be fun! Let's start with Zack, who, if he were a dish, would be comfort food. His story in Crisis Core is poignant, especially because we know where it's heading. He is tragically fated to die, not just for narrative symmetry, but because his survival would have ruined the entire aesthetic of Final Fantasy VII. You can't have a sunbeam skipping through a story about eco-terrorism and broken identity. It would clash. Zack is, in many ways, the Final Fantasy version of a noble death in a Shakespeare play. His function is to be better than everyone around him, then perish dramatically so we can all be sad about it later. His earnestness is his charm, but also his limit. He's aspirational, but not particularly complex. Now, the writing of Zack isn't shallow, far from it. His fall is gracefully handled, and his loyalty to Cloud is heart-wrenching. But Zack is what happens when the writers ask, what if we made a character who's everything Cloud thinks he is, but isn't, and then make him tragically unobtainable? It's not that he's perfect, it's that he's not messy, not contradictory. He doesn't squirm under moral ambiguity. And as every English professor would tell you while sipping on lukewarm tea, perfect is not interesting, or not for long anyway. Cloud, by contrast, is a mess, and that's precisely why he's brilliant. He is, at first glance, just another cool, spiky-haired anti-hero. Grumpy, aloof, self-assured. But quickly, the illusion fractures. What's clever about Cloud is that he believes the illusion. The player thinks they're following a typical stoic hero, only to discover they've been lied to by the protagonist himself. This is genuinely bold writing. Cloud's story is about self-deception, imposter syndrome, survivor's guilt, and the burden of performance. He tries to inhabit a persona, part Zack, part soldier bravado, and fails, spectacularly, and painfully. Unlike Zack, whose arc moves from optimism to martyrdom, Cloud's arc is a spiral, downward into confusion, upward into painful realization, and finally towards something like honest selfhood. He isn't an ideal, he's not even particularly well, he's just real. Cloud is what happens when you take the JRPG hero archetype, twist it into a psychological pretzel, and then ask what happens when someone knows they're not good enough and tries to become someone who is. Now on to Aerith. The fandom insists she's just stuck between two men like some flowery Juliet, but if you read the text closely, not just the nostalgic headcanon, it's not nearly so simple. Yes, Aerith and Zack had a sweet, affectionate bond. It was uncomplicated, in that we haven't yet been traumatized kind of way. They were young, Zack made her laugh, he left, he died, tragedy ensued. But that love was frozen in time. Aerith never got to see Zack falter. He remained perfect in her memory because he had no chance to become flawed, which, as we all know, is what real love eventually reveals. With Cloud, things are different, more jagged, more grown. Aerith initially likes him because he reminds her of Zack, but she stays because she sees what's underneath. And she chooses to care anyway. That is what makes her line in Remake,
because right now, I want to be with you,
so quietly devastating. She knows what's coming. She knows Zack is out there in some form, but she chooses Cloud. Not the memory of Zack, not the Zack light version he once pretended to be. And let's be clear, that's a massive shift from being a symbol of the past to being someone's present. Zack represents what was, Cloud represents what might be. Aerith isn't confused, the fandom is. To give Zack his due, he helped Aerith become who she is. When we meet her in Crisis Core, she's still somewhat unsure of herself, isolated, cautious, a little prickly with strangers. understandably traumatized by Shimra's constant interest in her bloodline. Zack treats her with warmth and lightness, and slowly she opens up. He doesn't fix her, but he gives her a space in which she feels seen without being objectified. He nurtures her confidence, he makes her laugh, he listens, and in doing so, Zack helps lay the foundation for the Aerith we meet in 7 proper. Kind, assertive, flirtatious, emotionally intelligent, and spiritually attuned. The Aerith who speaks her mind and makes choices, not because she's following anyone's lead, but because she knows herself. But here's the key point. Zack is the scaffold. He's not the final shape. When Aerith meets Cloud, she is no longer the sheltered girl from the church. She's the woman who's learned how to trust herself. She doesn't need rescuing. She chooses to engage with Cloud, not out of naivety or nostalgia, but out of genuine connection. Cloud doesn't lead Aerith, nor does he elevate her. What he does, and this is crucial, is reflect her back to herself. Just as she sees through his carefully crafted soldier facade, she allows him to see a version of himself that's worth saving. That's what mature love does. It doesn't complete you, it calls you to rise. With Zack, Aerith was learning how to love. With Cloud, she's learning how to be loved back in all its flawed, messy, frightening glory. And that, really, is the distinction that matters. Zack was her past, beautiful, meaningful, and formative. Cloud is her choice.